खण्डन भव बन्धन जग वन्दन वन्दितो जनन रूप धर निरंजन रूप धर निर्गुण गुण मोचन अगदूषण जगभूषण चेतन कायज्ञाना जन विमल नयन ज्ञानाञ्जन विमल नयन वीक्षणे मोह भास्वर भावसागर चिर उन्माद प्रेम पाहाय भक्तार्जन युगल चरण भक्तार्जन युगल चरण तारण भव द्रीम्भित युग ईश्वर जगदीश्वर योग सहाय निरोधन समाहित मन निरोधन समाहित शिव शिव आरती तोमा। वन्दन वन्दितो जय श्री गुरु महाराज जी की जय। ॐ ह्रीं ऋतं त्वमचलो गुणजिद्गुणेढ्या नक्तं दिवं सकरुणं तव पादपद्मं मोहं कषं बहुकृतं न भजे यतोऽहं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो भक्तिर्भगश्च भजनं भवभयकारी गच्छन्त्यलं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदमे न च भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ति तरसा त्वयि तृप्ततृष्णा रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि राम कृष्णे मर्त्यामृतं तव पदं मरणोन्मेनाशं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृत्यं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारी स्नान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं त्वशरणो जगदेकगम्य तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। ॐ नमः श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमः श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमः श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। सर्वमङ्गल माङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणे नमोस्तुते। सृष्टिस्थिति विनाशाना शक्ति भूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणमये नारायणे नमोस्तुते। शरणागत दीनार्त परित्राण परायणे सर्वशान्ति हरे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। जय 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 महामाई की जय। जय भगवान श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय। जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की जय।
Hello, check. Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Sure Sachit Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So last time, while discussing this lecture, Absolute and Manifestation by Vivekananda, we concluded at this point where he gives a very cryptic but rather profound definition of morality. What is meant by morality? Making the subject strong by attuning it to the absolute so that finite nature ceases to have control over us. This is where we ended. Yeah? Note one thing. The quest for the absolute, quest for consciousness without any trappings, without any limitations, is typically the domain of what we call Jnana Yoga, the method of progressing towards the core of one's being through enlightened reason, or what Vivekananda calls the analytical will of the philosopher. Yes? So essentially, it's an investigation into truth of existence itself, in particular, truth of one's own existence. Now, this is analytical in nature, but the practice of it brings up certain things which we typically think of as belonging to the domain of ethics or morality. Now, on the one hand, you have this analytical investigation, jigyasa, desire to know. That necessitates a certain freedom to inquire, freedom to quest for truth. On the other hand, we have ethics and morality, which are somewhat of the nature of injunctions, commands, anushasana. These two words, anushasana and jigyasa, are, so for example, I'll just give an illustration. The first sutra of the Yoga Sutras, it says, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. On the other hand, the Brahma Sutras, when they start off, they say, Atha Brahma Jigyasa. One is born and lives and finds culmination and fruition in inquiry, freedom. The other, through disciplining. What's the connection between these two? That's what is being addressed here. See, usually, if somebody tells us, oh, go ahead and do such and such a thing in such and such a way, very often, at least for the independent spirited amongst us, the first reaction is very often, but why? Why would you expect us to behave in such and such a way? And usually says, oh, no, there's no reason, I'm just telling you this. And that's usually not good enough. That's not satisfying. Why? Because after all, we are in this particular quest for truth. What we are asking for is something that is free from biases, free from prejudices. And then somebody is telling us, oh no, you have to do such and such in such and such way, simply because he or she is telling us to do so. Now, here is the thing. I mean, and superficially, there does seem to be a conflict between these two approaches. Here, a reconciliation or a rational basis for this discipline is being provided by Vivekananda. What is he doing? He's essentially saying what is ethics, what is morality, at least for the Vedantin, for the Advaitin, for the person devoted to inquiry, devoted to a quest for truth. And there, the discipline is essentially attuning oneself to the absolute. Our thinking, our life processes, our actions to be tuned to the absolute. One great Maharashtrian saint, Nisargadatta Maharaj, when one asked him about his practices, he responded that his teacher told him that he was this pure consciousness, unfettered by any limitations. And about this he used to say later on, I believed him and lived accordingly, acted accordingly. See, the thing is, having some kind of an abstract belief system, an abstract philosophy, some abstract theology is not really of much use in this path. It needs to be borne out by action, borne out by the way we lead our lives. In one of his bhashyas, Shankara says, those which are the signs, which are the natural behaviors of the people who have attained to enlightenment, become the practices of those who wish to achieve it. Yeah? Now, this practice of the this practice of trying to get attuned to the absolute, attuned to pure consciousness, this is what comprises morality. This is what comprises ethics from the point of view of Jnana Yoga. That's what he is talking about. The next paragraph elaborates on precisely this theme. Here is another thing to learn. How do you know that nature is finite? You can only know this through metaphysics. Nature is that infinite under limitation. What we call nature, essentially things which appear to us in various limited forms, and that conglomerate we refer to as nature. So each individual unit of it is almost by definition, almost tautologically limited. And here Vivekananda does not distinguish between that which is limited and that which is finite. So what we call spirituality, perhaps the best definition would be the quest for the infinite. Something that is not bound, something that is not limited. And this progress is supposed to be what the discipline is about. You can only know this through metaphysics. Nature is that infinite under limitations, therefore it is finite. So there must come a time when we shall have conquered all environments. And how are we to conquer them? We cannot possibly conquer all the objective environments. We cannot. The little fish wants to fly from its enemies in the water. How does it do so? By evolving wings and becoming a bird. The fish did not change the water or the air. The change was in itself. Change is always subjective. All through evolution, you find that the conquest of nature comes by change in the subject. Applying this to religion and morality, apply this to religion and morality, and you will find that the conquest of evil comes by the change in the subjective alone. That is how the Advaita system gets its whole force on the subjective side of man. To talk of evil and misery is nonsense because they do not exist outside. If I am immune against all anger, I never feel angry. If I am proof against all hatred, I never feel hatred. This is therefore the process by which to achieve that conquest through the subjective, by perfecting the subjective. I may make bold to say that the only religion which agrees with and even goes a little further than modern researches, both on physical and moral lines, is the Advaita, and that is why it appeals to modern scientists so much. They find that the old dualistic theories are not enough for them, do not satisfy their necessities. A man must have not only faith, but intellectual faith too. Now, in this latter part of the 19th century, such an idea as that religion coming from any other source than one's own hereditary religion must be false shows that there is still weakness left, and such ideas must be given up. I do not mean that such is the case in this country alone. He refers to the US. It is in every country and nowhere more than in my own. This Advaita was never allowed to come to the people. At first, some monks got hold of it and took it to the forests, and so it came to be called the forest philosophy. By the mercy of the Lord, the Buddha came and preached it to the masses, and the whole nation became Buddhists. Long after that, when atheists and agnostics had destroyed the nation again, it was found out that Advaita was the only way to save India from materialism. Thus has Advaita twice saved India from materialism. There's a lot of material in there. Let's take it up a bit by bit. First, the moral question, the ethical question. And how that is related to this philosophy of Advaita, or this process of inquiry that we call Jnana Yoga. And he has defined it, as we have seen before, that ethics, morality, is the tuning of the subject to the absolute. What does that entail? Essentially, and then he gives various instances. Anger, hatred are passions that drive us. These are subjective feelings, and we act according to them when there is unrestrained action guided by these passions. Society tells us that we are being unethical, which is why somebody who goes and kills unnecessarily is hauled off by the police and incarcerated. Violence in society is harmful for it, so people are incarcerated. This is from a social point of view. What about subjectively? Is there only a social sanction for what is ethical, what is moral? Or is there something more fundamental, something deeper, something more constitutional in human beings, in us? Unless the foundations are built on one's own subjective constitution, on the nature of us as individual human beings, merely a social sanction cannot be satisfactory in the long run. Therefore, ethical norms, practices, various kinds of specific practices in terms of ethics, they change from time to time. They change from place to place. Which is why you find that these various organized religions, which have captured these various practices into social norms, they change from place to place, from time to time. But what about the basic principle? The constitution, the fundamental constitution of individual human beings. Does that change that much? No. And therefore, if one is to have something to guide these social norms, it has to be based on certain universal facts about the human subject. Not society as a conglomerate of individuals, not society as something dictating certain norms, but something coming more fundamentally from one's own constitution, from the constitution of human beings as a whole. This trying to understand and tuning our feelings, thoughts, emotions, actions, according to this universal structure, as far as we understand it, as far as any individual understands it. This is the practice of tuning oneself to the absolute. Absolute means various things, and it might sound too abstract. However, in very simple terms, that which is universal to human existence, tuning our thoughts and feelings to that, would be the practice of tuning oneself to the absolute. That's all this is about. Hence you find, on the one hand, in the Yoga Shastras, this practice of ahimsa, which means essentially not being violent unnecessarily. This aggression is of no final value. And it's the same thing, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is a Christian saying, but it's essentially, there are these fundamental things which we find common to various organized religions, and that which is common to these things are not specific to society, but we can conclude that these are universal as far as human beings are concerned. This universality is, if you find that there are certain norms which are talked about in all kinds of ethics. Jainism is an atheistic religion. Buddhism is an agnostic religion. However, nobody has stressed ethical concerns more than them. So whenever you find certain ethical concerns and ethical injunctions common to all of these various organized religions, then there is ample ground to at least suspect that this is an indication that there is something universal in the human experience in the human constitution that would be worthwhile to study. And then, say for example, let us pick up these two things that Vivekananda has talked about: anger, hatred. Does it help anybody? Does it help us? The person being angry, for the time being, has lost command over himself or herself. Which means that we have lost our poise, we have lost our ability to calmly analyze and get at a true solution to a particular problem. Which means that this getting angry and hating another not only harms the other person, it also harms oneself. We have talked about this before. In a certain sense, from a scientific point of view, these are evolutionary leftovers. When animals would hunt, they need to drive themselves with this sudden release of adrenaline. Yeah? Excite the mind, excite the muscles, and exercise that energy to either procure food for oneself or prevent oneself from becoming prey to another animal. So it's necessary. Anger, fear, hatred was necessary for survival as a species at a certain point of time. Question: how much of it is necessary today when we live in society? And this question needs to be asked of ourselves in moments of anger, in moments when we are in the throes of some passion. This questioning of ourselves is what constitutes viveka, discrimination, analysis, self-analysis. It's not analyzing the objects of experience. It's an inward directed analysis, an inward directed quest for truth. And then the reasons for our emotions, for our passions, which often referred to as negative, which distract us, the reasons for such things to exist in the framework we live in, the reasons are found to be wanting. Essentially, we find, why did I become, see, Sarvapriyanji was here some days back. He told me this very nice way of analyzing anger. See, when one feels angry, that anger is very real. We are living in that anger, so to speak. Second, we also tell ourselves stories to say that, look, this anger is justified. And third, in expressing that anger, we feel fulfilled. Now try to understand this from a Vedantic perspective. It is real, that anger is real. This is the Sat aspect. It is justified, which means reason justifies it. This is the Chit aspect. And we feel fulfilled, satisfied that we are angry. This is the Ananda aspect. Yeah? So which means that in and through even our anger, these highest notions come and filter through. But then what happens when the wave of anger passes away? We are no longer angry. From Sat, it has become Asat. It's no longer there. And then we feel, okay, that's not really something that can be justified with a calm mind. Which means from Chit, it has become Achit. And instead of feeling fulfilled or satisfied, we regret that we had become angry. which means from Ananda it has become Anananda or Nirananda. Which means that this fundamental aspects of our existence, knowledge, bliss, joy, it once got reflected in this wave called anger, but once it has passed away, we understand that this wave of anger had nothing whatsoever to do with these fundamental aspects of Sat Chit Ananda, meaning existence, knowledge, bliss. It was being reflected on a mental wave, on a passion, and once it has passed, we see that that particular wave had nothing to do with what we are fundamentally seeking. So this is an analysis of this passion called anger. It's pointless. It's of no value. That's what happens when it goes away. When our mind returns to a calm, poised state, these passions, there is one particular event which I'd like to draw your attention to. Ramakrishna and Totapuri, his sannyasa guru, were sitting in front of the fire discussing the highest truths of Advaita. At such a time, some chap came along and picked up a piece of flaming wood from the dhuni in front of them, essentially to light some tobacco or something like that. Totapuri got incensed, very angry, essentially because to him this fire was something sacred, some symbol which was very important. That's what he had grown up with. And after that fellow had run away, he found Ramakrishna laughing. Why are you laughing? You see this mischievous guy, he came and picked up something from the dhuni and he ran away. Just imagine somebody, any one of us, if somebody goes and desecrates this shrine, the first reaction would be anger, right? Or so that's the kind of reaction, very natural reaction. But he found Ramakrishna laughing. He said, why are you laughing? He says, I am actually just amused at the extent of your conviction. Just some time back, some moments back, we were talking about these highest truths of Advaita, but now you are caught in the throes of anger. Imagine a disciple telling his guru or teacher this, essentially saying that, look, is this how true your convictions are? Any normal person would have probably tried to give him some injunction. No, I am your teacher. Why don't make all these comments? Totapuri being Totapuri, somebody for whom this Advaitic truth was a truth, he immediately responds. Immediately, as soon as it's pointed out to him, he immediately becomes calm and tells Ramakrishna, you are right. This anger is a terribly mischievous object. I hereby throw it away. And from people who had seen him after that, man never got angry again. See, this is the kind of what we commonly refer to as people as Brahmagyanis, etc., etc. But this is the scalpel, like I think in one of his, this Richard Schiffman says, we cannot but admire, we cannot but stand in awe of this mind, the strength of mind, which has this scalpel-like sharpness, which recognizes this flaw as soon as it's pointed out to him and cuts it off with scalpel-like precision and throws it away, never to be affected by it. It is exactly this tuning of the mind to the absolute. This is a great example, and it's good to bear in mind because it basically tells us that these are the ways we practice tuning our mind to the absolute. And this is the practice of ethics that is in tune with, and that is in accordance with, the highest ethics as prescribed by the Advaita. Yeah? So it is not this Advaitic truth or analysis is not license for moral laxity. So in the Kathopanishad there is this thing, yathodakam shuddhe shuddham asiktam tadrigeva bhavati. See, what is the aim and end of all of it? They say yatha udakam, as a drop of water, shuddhe shuddham. Once it becomes a pure drop of water, falls into pure water, it gets mingled without distinction. This is the making of the mind tuned to the absolute. This is the ethical practice involved. Tuning it to the absolute means freeing it from its conditioning. This is true freedom that one is aspiring for. Not being constrained by various limitations. This was the first part that was talked about, the ethical aspect of things. Another place is na avirato, again in the Kathopanishad, na avirato dushcharitan na shanto na samahita na shanta manasa yasya pragyane na eva apnuyat. Na avirato dushcharitan, which means somebody who is caught and acts according to the passions merely by the fact that he or she has gotten some insight into this Advaitic truth. Insight mind, pragya. So basically an understanding, no, this is true, but does not act accordingly. Na avirato dushcharitan. Through merely that insight, not backed by this kind of practice, such a person is not going to be able to hold on to that conviction. It is only when we start acting according to these convictions that slowly our earlier tendencies towards passions, towards anger, towards hatred, etc., all that starts diminishing and relaxing its hold on us. Subsequently, and we'll take up this discussion quite a bit down the line. I'm going to be away from 5th of May to 18th of June. But after we come back, we'll take up this other point. It's a theme that I'm rather fond of. He's talked about here, where he essentially says that there are twice has Advaita saved India, and he refers to first the Buddha and then the Shankara's Advaita. What are the parallels? Why have both been described as non-dualistic? This is something we will take up maybe in the later part of June again. But I'd really encourage people to think about this. In Buddhism, there is no personal God, really, at least in the traditional forms. On the other hand, there is a moral law that they talk about. What they talk about, essentially, let me just briefly say some things about it, and then we'll take this up again later on. On the one hand, they talk about shunya, which means essentially that all of this world, all of our perception is bereft of any fundamental substance. This has a reflection in Advaita. It's called Jagat Mithyatva. Yeah? Mithya means a conglomerate. It does not mean false. Yeah? These two are very similar. On the other hand, there is this Pratitya Samutpada doctrine of Buddhism, interdependence of all beings, of all arising. This compassion, which is the other hallmark of Buddhism, is based on this particular principle. All existence is closely interrelated. And there is a Vedantic analog of that, which comes across in this particular statement, Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. All this manifest world is nothing but consciousness itself. These parallels, they are not just abstract ideas. On the one hand, this compassion, or what is really the motive power behind the service activities of the Ramakrishna order on the one hand. And this analysis, whether you call it Shunyata by following the Buddhist philosophy or Brahman by following Advaita, that is this process of analysis, which is encapsulated by this other thing, the seeking for one's liberation. These, in the context of the Ramakrishna order, that becomes this Atmana Moksha Jagat Hita. Yeah? On the one hand, analysis to get at the truth of one's being. Second, basically serving the world as part and parcel of oneself. There are distinct parallels between all these things, and essentially, finally, the service and analysis, service and inquiry is reflected in Advaita Vedanta on the one hand, Madhyamaka Buddhism particularly on the other, and this twin ideal of the Ramakrishna mission, Atmana Mokshartham Jagat Hitaya Cha. We'll return to this in the end of June. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.